Hey everybody, it's Tim Sackett, and we're back with another episode of the HR Famous podcast where we, my friends, and I talk about all things HR, the good, the bad, the ugly, and hopefully a little bit of the funny of all the crazy stuff we do. And we got a couple of things to talk about today. Not necessarily funny, but we'll put our spin on it for sure. With me, as always, is my good friends. First, JLee out of Washington, D.C., the metro area, and also Vice President of Brand Talent for the Marriott Corporation. Marriott rhymes with chariot. And also my best friend, Kris Dunn, today coming out of the Birmingham, Alabama. I always want to say Roll Tide because that's like what everyone says, but nope, he's a War Eagle, Auburn. Kris Dunn coming at us, not in Atlanta, but out of Birmingham, Alabama. So we're going to start with the coronavirus because everywhere you turn, this you cannot turn on a TV, you can't look at a website, you can't look at your phone, Twitter, social media. It is everywhere. One of my pet peeves that I want you guys to react to is the death tally. I'm not a huge fan of the death tally. Currently there's 3,000 people who've passed away, and just every day it seems like they're looking for a new death tally, and then where the people have died and who the people have died. And we have this obsession, I feel, with the death thing. JLee, reaction to the death tally.
Well, when the numbers increase, that gives the media something new to be able to talk about, new news alert, breaking news. So we're kind of stuck in this, endless cycle of being able to report on it. It's not even daily. It's like by the hour. It's insane. I hate it.
It's completely insane. KD?
I think it's a necessary evil, right? I think the media, like governments have to report on that, and the media is just going to grab it and put it out there. Scary stuff,
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I think it's, which one do you hate more, Timmy? The actual death tally or the reported new cases? I'm guessing the deaths, right?
Yeah, well, here's my thing. Yeah, I like the death. The deaths are way worse. My thing is, I would, if they're going to do death tallies, I want to see a death tally for children that died from starvation in the U.S. Let's talk about really, again, not to say that coronavirus isn't important, but there's so many bigger issues at play here, that we don't report on, and all of a sudden this one thing pops up, and now it becomes a daily thing that we have to keep updating. Okay, that's just a pet peeve. The bigger thing I want to talk about is the impact of HR and planning, and how it seemingly seems like everybody now is jumping on this bandwagon of saying, hey, we need to plan, we need to really prepare for this. At the same token, you have this big majority of folks that I think I run into. I was at a local kind of meeting thing here last week, and there were some folks talking that were like, well, the flu is bigger than coronavirus and we don't plan for that, And I'm just like, oh boy, we're in trouble. Because it seems like every time a pandemic or something like that happens, SARS, bird flu, whatever it might be, we're so far behind in America in terms of planning. Jessica, I know you work for a big corporation. You guys are, I'm sure, going through planning. KD, I'm sure you have some of your, you work with a lot of hospital systems that are going through some major kind of planning. Do you guys feel that we do enough planning in HR around big things like this?
Well, I think we probably don't, but there's a good reason for that, right? Everybody is incredibly busy. So, JLee, I'll throw it to you. I think one of the problems is, when do you plan for, a global contagion? What's the plan for that? I don't know that there's a plan for that.
Maybe when the last time one happened, like SARS or Ebola, or it's not like these don't only happen once every 10 years. It seems like they're popping up every 5 years, and yet we still act like we're shocked every time. Oh my gosh, everybody wear masks.
Wasn't there a movie about this?
Contagion.
Wasn't it?
Contagion, that's right.
Well,
is it part of it that we want to be more optimistic in nature? We want to focus on the good, the positive, and I think there's a kind of a psychological element of not wanting to prepare for the worst. So that's certainly part of it.
I think there's been like about a decade of like HR leadership training too. That was like, how do you become like this business partner with your executives? And I think there's part of this where you don't want to come in and be that panicked HR person in front of your CEO.
Totally. Yeah.
At the same time, like if you have a CEO that's totally ignoring this, then what do you do? Because I think that's where I hear more of that happening, where they'll go, this isn't a big deal. And you're like, hey, understand whether you have 100 employees or 100,000 employees, if somebody gets the coronavirus on your staff and you don't want them to come to work, and yet you have no plan besides, oh, go home for 2 weeks and then we're not going to pay you, or we might pay you, or like, again, there's like no conversation around what should we do. And again, for people like you, all, the three of us, we can work from home. We can grab our laptops, we can work from home, we can be sick and be quarantined for 14 days, and our job isn't necessarily going to change that much. For 90% of Americans, this potentially is a death sentence, not in terms of the virus, but in terms of financially. Like, how do we, what are you guys' opinions, or like, how do you even, like, I keep thinking of my own self, like if somebody comes down with it, of course, we can have people not work here, but if I'm an hourly manufacturing facility, then what do I do? Am I going to pay my people? Am I going to pay part of my people? Like it's an individual company issue, organizational issue, but it's also a bigger unemployment issue, like federal issue, state issue. I just don't think enough people, besides here's what's happening. Like the governor of Michigan comes on, emergency, like state of the state address. We need to wash our hands more. Everybody wash your hands. Like, shut up for the wash. I want to punch somebody in the face with it. Like, I get it, but like, what are we doing about the real issue of getting people paid if they're sick at work?
Well, Tim,
not telling them not to come to work.
Well, Tim, the reason we don't plan more is because there's no ROI on planning for
disaster,
global plague, right? because you're going to plan for that. I mean, in America, we've got the CDC, and I'd like to think we are as prepared as a lot of, developed countries. But I think to your point, I think it's rapidly getting to the place where, as we're recording this, like the smart people in HR and leadership are trying to figure out what they do if someone gets sick, right? Because, I think we're still in the cold and flu season, like normal flu. So what do you do if somebody gets sick, given this backdrop of everything that's happening worldwide? Let me read you something that I saw on LinkedIn from a guy who's getting ready to go to a conference next week. Okay, let me read this to the two of you, and I'll throw it to you, JLee. So this guy said, hey, I'm going to a conference in California next week, and I just got this from the organizers. Sessions and activities are proceeding as scheduled with some important enhancements for your health and safety. Get ready, Tim Sackett, because one of your favorites is in this. So this is interesting. They say no sniffles now, no sniffles now or in the past 14 days. So if you have the sniffles, do not come to the Sackmania conference, the Sackmania conference.
Yeah.
No handshakes, which, by the way, good practice. Wash your hands.
That would also mean no hugs, Tim.
Didn't say that. It said no handshakes.
Wash your hands before every session, and note that attendees will be temperature scanned. So
Ooh.
I think you got some like ones that would piss Tim Sackett off because he's tired of the state of emergency and wash your hands. And you got some other ones that get into kind of the privacy issue with like hey, we've got a thermometer. We're not telling you which end it's going in, but just be prepared to be scanned. And I guess those can be done externally.
Are we prepared, the three of us as HR professionals, if our company goes, hey, we got you the little temperature scanner things. You're all going to stand outside as people come in and scan them on their way into work. Line up. Everyone's getting scanned. Like, don't you think we're probably getting close to that?
I think we're getting close to that. I mean, so I think where you sit in the world, kind of organization you work for, industry, is going to dictate varying levels of preparedness and involvement. And so, for us as a global company that is in the travel space with hotels in China, in Wuhan, we certainly are talking about it a lot, and having to come up with contingency plans or activating contingency plans. And HR may have to get in there with some of these things such as temperature checks, but there are, I think, huge opportunities for HR pros to start getting involved in the conversation, even if you're not like in a service-based industry, where there's, I think a lot of people are talking about remote work and things of that sort. But you said something, Kris, that actually made me think about like my own situation. People with sniffles, like I've been battling a flu cold for the past 2 weeks, I think, and I keep putting myself on mute because I have a cough. And like you have potential fear that people have right now around like, oh my gosh, she's coughing. Like, is she sick? What does she have? Like, I've had colleagues ask me, when's the last time you traveled? Like, have you been to Asia recently? And I even have friends who've, asked me like, are you okay? What do you have going on? And I think part of it is like genuine concern, but I'm actually worried about, people having bias and perceptions of, she's Asian, she's coughing, I don't know her, could she have something? And there's some like real issues HR people are going to need to manage in this environment, potentially around, bias and how to not treat people differently based on fear and based on biases. But of course, it's balanced with there's some real stuff out there. I don't know. Well, it's a complicated time.
I can tell you that we're not even close to the height of potential biases. Can you imagine if right now we're at, few hundred cases in the U.S. it's going to raise. Obviously, we know there's more than that. It's been out in the wild now. It's going to happen. If we get to the point where we have 1 million, 2 million, 3 million cases, can you imagine the fallback, JLee, on Asian people who are sick and the stuff that will, I mean, because, there's a bunch, we know already 50% of America or whatever voted for Trump. Like, you just know that there's going to be some real backlash of stuff coming down the pipe. If
oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, Korean people aren't the favorite right now for winning an Oscar. There's that whole, I don't even know where you start with some of this.
By the way, I watched Parasite last night. Oh my gosh.
So good, awesome. Right? Oh my gosh. We should do a whole episode on Parasite.
Hi there, I'm Peter Zollman. I'm a co-host of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast.
And I'm Stephen Rothberg, and I guess that makes me the other co-host.
Every other week, we're joined by guests from the world's leading job sites.
Together, we analyze news about general, niche, and aggregator job board and recruitment marketplaces sites.
Make sure you sign up and subscribe today.
Hey, so a little hope on the horizon, and you got to be careful with the news sources that you read today. So just FYI, when I go into Google News, I'm scanning like the information on the coronavirus, and I'm looking for what I consider to be like neutral news sources. And one of the things I saw last night, I don't know if the two of you saw it, but I saw that in China, there's actually been a decrease for the first time in reported cases. I also saw that there are plans underway that they're going to scale down one of those. You guys have probably seen this. They do pop-up hospitals, right?
It's crazy.
Where they're doing the modular like hospitals so they can like deal with this. And they've got plans to take the first one of those down and deconstruct it, decommission it based on kind of the slope. So I think if there's any hope after, not sure how long it's been, right? 2 to 3 months, that we start to see hopefully the peak and it starts coming down. And then the other thing I saw, which is a little bit unnerving, but it also speaks to the fact that, why this is incredibly serious, not everyone, and actually a low percentage of people are going to pass away. Not that any percentage is appropriate, but I also read that I don't know what they call people that work for the CDC. It's a really fancy term. Do the two of you know?
CDCers, the CDCers.
We'll call them. That's not what they call them, JLee, but we'll call them the CDCers. Actually, say that 30 to 40% of the world is going to be exposed to this virus before it kind of recedes.
The epidemiologist probably. You know what else is a silver lining, though? I've seen some videos circulating on the web. That's actually nothing ever good starts with. I saw some videos circulating on the web, but around like how to properly wash your hands. And I'm telling you, I don't mean this to be funny, but like teaching people the proper way to wash your hands, amazing. Like that's a silver lining. Let us all learn how to do that properly to prevent all sorts of spread of disease.
Hey Tim, what's the advice? What's the advice we have for paid time off? Before we kind of took it back, and I started talking about return on investment, you started talking about paid time off and having a plan with that. Why don't you outline that a little bit? Because I think that's the thing that people in the HR realm really have to help their organizations understand, right?
Well, and I think right now, especially with like this ultra low unemployment environment, if you have people that are working for you that are really difficult to come by, and that doesn't mean that they're an IT professional, they're a doctor. It could be. I work with organizations all the time that struggle to find hourly workers. Like you really have to think through this and go, okay, hey, if we don't have paid sick time normally, if somebody comes down with COVID-19, are we going to give them 14 days at 60% pay or whatever? And that's what like JLee was talking about in terms of the contingency planning. I think that's a real conversation we need to start having with executives and our CFOs to find out what can we afford? Because like at the same time, potentially, if we know our workforce is going through this, potentially our customers are also going through this, thus we're losing, revenue. Like it's not so simple to say, oh, well, you just have to take care of your people, and pay. Like not all of us are on this like kind of Silicon Valley VC money train that you can just go, oh, it's just like freaking monopoly money and we can just play with it. Most of us are in real organizations that are saying, hey, we kind of live and die by the P&L.
Well, and the thing I would hope is companies that have, a service element, their people are public facing, like they have a little bit more of an imperative to try to figure out, how to pay their people, because you can't have someone sick on the front line, coughing on people's food, coughing as they're, opening the bus door, whatever it might be. And so, thoughtfulness around potential impact that they may have on the broader public is super important.
But you can't
I will tell
really.
You, JLee, we see this, JLee, I know you see this too, like in cruise ships, hotels, restaurants. When I was at Applebee's, like when the norovirus hits, and then you go back to like patient zero to figure out like how did this happen. It's always some employee was sick. They told their manager they were sick, and the manager like, nope, if you miss one more shift, you're fired. Or I don't have anybody replace you tonight. You just have to work and kind of work your way through it. And then they go and give hundreds of people norovirus because they, so we have all these rules and these policies around you can't go to work if you're sick. If you're vomiting or have diarrhea, you can't go. It's 3 days before you can return. And yet we still have constant norovirus outbreaks across the U.S. because we can't figure out how to pay people when they can't come to work.
But when it comes to the coronavirus, in order to effectively pay for somebody's leave on that, they actually have to be tested. So yes. I think like one of the like blocking and tackling things that any HR group would have to do if they wanted to do that, and I don't know the availability of this. I've heard that it's an issue, but you actually have to have a test available. And then if someone gets sick, depending on your level of concern as an organization, you would tell them to stay home, but you would also have to administer a test to see if you were going to pay for that. Because I think, Tim, what you're saying is you would pay for someone to stay home if it was the coronavirus. If it's simply cold and flu season, you would go back to all of your other guidance and you probably wouldn't want to pay for those 2 or 3 weeks for them to be out. Am I right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it definitely have to be a positive test stuff. But then again, right now in the U.S., we're not even ready for that. I think it was South Korea, JLee, that you shared an article with us where they were doing drive-through test facilities. That it's like in 10 minutes you can get tested and figure out if you have it or not, which I think is brilliant. I'm sure we'll get there in the U.S. where I think I saw today, like we were down from like just 2 or 3 places that within a week they'll have 100 different testing stations within the U.S. So it'll ramp up quickly, I'm sure. Hey, I'm going to get us out of here. This one last thing. So the World Health Organization had said, really what COVID is also showing us is this is the first infodemic that we have, not just just a normal pandemic, because now we have this worldwide exchange of information that's happening at just seconds every time someone gets updated with something, someone's going out, which has all this misinformation as well. And so there's such a fight against all the misinformation versus what we really need to get out there, which is causing all kinds of issues with how we deal with this. And so I have a stat which causes this to explain the entire thing. 38% of Americans will not buy a Corona beer from Mexico because of the coronavirus, which happens to be exactly my fear for this upcoming election.
Sounds legit to me. I don't is there a problem? So America moves to old Milwaukee.
Great conversation as always. And so for all of us here at the HR Famous podcast, that's going to do it for us today. And so for JLee and Kris Dunn, I am Tim Sackett. Stay safe out there, HR friends. We are out.